The Israel Defense Forces now saying the only airstrike carried out Tuesday night into Wednesday morning was the strike in Beirut that killed Hezbollah's second in command. Rear Admiral Daniel Hagari saying, quote, "I want to emphasize there was no other aerial strike, not a missile, and not an Israeli drone in the entire Middle East that night, and I won't comment further." The statement comes as Israel has not claimed responsibility for the assassination of Hamas leader Ismail Haniyeh. The New York Times reporting the explosion in Tehran that killed Haniyeh was actually set off by a remote-controlled bomb smuggled about 2 months ago into Hamas leader's room there in the guest house where he was staying for the new Iranian president's inauguration. The IDF spokesperson, Daniel Hagari, did release a very brief statement in English, about 2 minutes in length. I do want to play that for you now.
Last Saturday, the Hezbollah terrorist organization in Lebanon fired this. This Iranian Falak 1 rocket directly at a soccer field in Majdal Shams in northern Israel. 12 innocent children playing soccer on a Saturday evening were murdered as this rocket containing 53 kilograms of explosives hit the field. Hezbollah claimed they were not responsible for the attacks. This is a lie. The evidence is irrefutable. The rocket itself, as Hezbollah is the only organization in Lebanon with an Iranian Falak 1 rocket. On Tuesday evening, the IDF conducted a precise strike on Fuad Shukr, Hezbollah's most senior military commander and the terrorist responsible for the attack on Majdal Shams. Let me remind you who Hezbollah really is. Hezbollah is officially recognized as a terrorist organization by over 20 countries around the world, including the United States, the United Kingdom, and Germany. It is responsible for deadly terror attacks in Lebanon, Israel, and around the world. Hezbollah is a global terror organization that poses a global threat. Their ongoing aggression and attacks are dragging the region into a wider escalation. As we have said many times, while we prefer to resolve hostilities without a wider war, we remain fully prepared for any scenario. As we have recently proven, Israel knows how to deal with those threats and how to respond. Just today, threats were made by terrorists in the region. Throughout the war, we have proven our determination and resilience. We know how to defend ourselves. We have strong offensive capabilities, and we have strong defensive systems. And we have international partners who will increase their forces in the region and assist us in defense against those threats, both near and far.
All right, that was IDF spokesperson Daniel Hagari, Rear Admiral there. And I do want to go over one of his comments, of course, that is making the rounds on social media, as he did say, quote, "I want to emphasize there was no other aerial strike, not a missile and not an Israeli drone in the entire Middle East that night, and I won't comment further." To help break down all of the latest developments, I do want to bring in Paul Salem, the Vice President for International Engagement at the Middle East Institute, as well as the former President and CEO. Thank you so much for taking the time, as always, to join us here.
Thank you, Judge. Thanks for having me.
Of course. Well, first off, I do want to ask you the overall question here of what do you make of Hagari's comments that the only strike that happened, airstrike, was over in Beirut that night?
Well, I think as it turned out, indeed, there was not a strike in Tehran, but rather it was a bomb that was planted in the residence where Ismail Haniyeh was a guest. Israel has not claimed responsibility for it. So that's, I mean, I think, that's what he's referring to, that there was no violation of Iranian airspace. Maybe it's a way to blunt any potential Iranian response, that they did not violate Iranian airspace. They did not attack from the air. But otherwise, the attack did happen, and Iran does accuse Israel of being responsible for that.
And as you mentioned, Israel has not claimed responsibility for the attack at all. You talked a little bit about the explosion that killed the leader. It's apparently was set off by a remote controlled bomb that was smuggled about 2 months earlier into that room. So my question, that would require a lot of planning. That would mean that a lot went into this.
Well, certainly both in Tehran and in Beirut, it's quite obvious that the Iranian, the Islamic Republic, and their security system must be certainly very penetrated by foreign intelligence, maybe Israeli intelligence, maybe others. The same can be said in Beirut, to know where that commander was, at what point in time, which apartment he was in. So there's a sense both in Beirut and in Tehran that there's a lot of penetration of those security systems, and that Israel is indicating it can find and kill opponents whenever it chooses.
President Biden was asked just a few hours ago about the death of Haniyeh, and he did say, he was asked about the ceasefire deal itself, and said that it definitely won't help a ceasefire deal. What are your thoughts on that? Could it potentially impact a ceasefire hostage release deal?
Well, definitely it will impact. First of all, I mean, it brings the negotiations to an abrupt halt for at least a number of months, probably. The Qatari mediators issued a statement saying, well, how can you be in the middle of negotiations, in fact, in the final stages of a negotiation, and have one side kill the head of the other side? That's certainly not going to help the process of negotiation. There's no doubt that Israel wanted to get Ismail Haniyeh. They've said that openly. But the timing does mean, and it means probably for many in Israel, that those who were hoping for a deal between Israel and Hamas that would see an early release of the hostages, that is not going to happen. And the war in Gaza is set to continue for a number of months.
I want to take you out to this live image we have showing the White House in D.C. as we know that President Biden and Prime Minister Netanyahu actually spoke yesterday. A White House summary of the call states the two discussed efforts to support Israel against missiles, drones, all of that, including, quote, new defensive U.S. military deployments. Do we have any idea what that means, or is the White House purposely being vague?
Well, we do know that there's a number of naval units that are steaming into the Eastern Mediterranean, in addition to those that are already there. We know that during the Iranian missile and drone attack on Israel in April, the U.S. and U.S. forces themselves interdicted a lot of those missiles and drones, but they also coordinated interdiction and intelligence sharing with Arab allies in the region. Which helped Israel and the U.S. defend Israel from that attack. So maybe we don't know many of the technical details. Obviously, they'd want to keep that under wraps, but it's certainly the case that the U.S. Is putting units in place to help in defense in case there is a major escalation, keeping in mind that most American and Israeli analysts agree that if there is a major eruption from Hezbollah in South Lebanon, as well as other parties, Israeli and American defense systems would be hard-pressed to catch, everything that's coming across the border.
And a big question is going to be, how far will the U.S. go to protect its ally Israel if things do escalate? Do we have any idea?
Well, I think there is there isn't necessarily a clear ceiling to this. The U.S. is committed to Israel's defense, period. And Netanyahu's speech before the U.S. Congress just last week underlines that, and underlines that bipartisan support. Prime Minister Netanyahu knows that, but I don't think the Biden administration and the Netanyahu government are on the same page at all in terms of where Netanyahu is going. The U.S. wants Netanyahu to finalize a deal in Gaza to end that war and bring that to an end. Netanyahu is refusing to do that. By killing Haniyeh, he eliminates that possibility. The U.S. does not want escalation with Hezbollah and does not want escalation with Iran. Netanyahu went ahead and escalated both with Hezbollah and with Iran. And now, so now Israel is awaiting the response of Iran and Hezbollah and maybe other allies. And the U.S. whether it wants it or not, is locked into this conflict. And the more Israel is attacked, the more the U.S. will have to be militarily engaged.
Is there genuine concern right now within Israel of an all-out war with Iran and all of its proxies?
Well, obviously Israel is a very divided society. It was before October 7. It is today. We've seen demonstrations to try to get a deal with Hamas and bring the hostages home. We've seen Netanyahu and his government say, basically, that's not what we're going to do. We're going to continue to prosecute the war, and we're going to continue to go after Hamas and others. There has been a strong, position among the Israeli defense leadership and the political leadership, and I would say many in the Israeli public, who've wanted a kind of a showdown with Hezbollah. Now, maybe they didn't all think through what that means and how to do that, but there's a lot of anger towards Hezbollah, and I think Netanyahu is banking that a confrontation with Hezbollah is something at some level which will be supported and will be somewhat popular. A confrontation with Iran, on the other hand, is potentially a much bigger lift. I definitely think there's a lot of people in Israel that are concerned about what such a multi-front war will do. And certainly there's tremendous concern in the White House and the U.S. administration.
Yemen's Houthi rebels also vowing a, quote, military response against Israel following the killing of Hamas's leader. Do we know what the Houthis are capable of compared to Hamas and Hezbollah, or is that kind of unknown?
The Houthis are, bringing in the attack that the Israelis launched on Hodeidah, which is a main port in Yemen, which they control, which happened about 10 days ago. And they're putting that in the mix and saying, Iran attacked Beirut, Iran attacked Tehran, and Iran attacked Hodeidah. So they're putting themselves in the same boat, and they say, we too want to join in the retaliation. Now, the Houthis are somewhat far away. Whatever capacities they have are derivative from whatever the Iranians give them. So whether they join the fight or not, that actually won't make much of a difference, much of a major difference from the Israeli and American perspective. And anything that is launched from Yemen will have to go either over the Red Sea or over Saudi Arabia, where the U.S. has a lot of eyes and there's a lot of time. So I don't think they're a major concern, although, yes, they probably will be involved as well.
Paul Salem, as always, thank you so much for taking the time to join us and break it all down. Anything else you want to add about any of this before I let you go?
Well, I do want to say that the Middle East and the U.S., I would say, is on the precipice of being engaged in a very, very major war, and one that might be very prolonged with Hezbollah and potentially with Iran itself. If that war does ignite, it is likely to affect the Gulf in general and is likely to have a major impact on oil prices and become a war of global consequence. We are sleepwalking into what could potentially be a very cataclysmic situation where the U.S. military will be engaged in a war that it didn't choose at a time when we have effectively a lame duck president in the White House. There won't be anybody really in charge until early next year. It is a very, very dangerous situation for the United States, let alone for countries in the region.
A lot of unknowns. Paul, thank you so much for taking the time to be here with us and help break it down. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Josh.